All right, ladies and germs, the moment you've been waiting for, I'm sure. Before I get into my opinions, I'm gonna give you a little context about myself so you know who it is that is spouting off these ramblings. So, I am a professional developer. I have well over 10 years of experience, mostly in banks and hedge funds. This is my LinkedIn profile if you're interested. This is my blog, JS1 a day, if you're interested. So let's get into it. So I'm sure you saw the One More Thing presentation a couple of days ago. And if you're a developer, you may have watched WWDC 2020. And Apple did show some great stuff. I'm not an Apple fanboy. I honestly don't even care. But I thought the new hardware, the chips that they showed, was pretty impressive. Um, but the thing that I think nobody talks about is everybody's going goo goo gaga over the hardware, but there are, in my opinion, enormous ramifications for software, particularly development. So when Apple announced WWDC that they were going to go with their own chips and consolidate their hardware, immediately what I realized is this means that there's going to be um, a very strong consolidation of their software. So Mac is going to disappear and it's going to become one operating system. The different versions of the applications are eventually going to go away. So if you look at that, then you might be thinking, well, doesn't that mean that there's less software to code for? But let me try and show you that. And the point of this opinion piece is to show you that the opportunities for Swift development are about to skyrocket. And if you're not already a Swift developer, and I wasn't until a few months ago, um, I would strongly suggest that you get on board or at least investigate. And, these are going to be my reasons why. So, as I said, most of my experience was in financials, really mostly in large banks in the Northeast. So I know somewhat about the way that they think, especially on the IT side, because I did a mix of network administration as well as development. So one of the things that they always want to do is they want to consolidate. They want to consolidate down to a single, repetitive, repeatable set of processes, but also hardware as much as they can and operating systems as much as they can. So, what does that have to do with this presentation and Swift development? I think most large companies think in this way, and I suspect with this announcement and just the inherent abilities of Apple to innovate um, just in technology in general, that Apple, although they have mind share and they have pull in the industry in terms of design leadership and things of that nature where other companies copy them, they don't really have that much market share dominance. So there's very few countries and very few sectors where they are well over 50% of the market. But what I'm saying is, with this new capability, I think that even in the PC space, which was, since forever a Microsoft domain, I think they're going to start taking major market share. And if that happens, and because they already have significant share in phones and tablets, even in the enterprise, these guys that are overseeing managing these divisions, they're going to realize that there are opportunities for consolidation, the consolidation that I was just talking about a couple of minutes ago. So when they start developing their applications or planning to develop their future applications, whereas in the past it would have been ridiculous for them to even consider building a native, Mac OS application, Apple, with all of the innovation that they're clearly doing in these new chips, faster machine learning, much faster general processing, much better battery life, all that stuff. I think that the market share that they're going to gain from that is going to be significant, to the point that, again, when these guys are planning and they're thinking about doing consolidation to save money, they're thinking about future application projects, they're going to see that more and more of their devices are Mac devices, which again in the future will be of the singular type, meaning they're all under one operating system. The decision to go native Mac, which just means iOS in the future, is going to be a viable decision. It's not going to be impossible, really, like it is today. So that obviously means the opportunity for Swift developers is just going to grow. I mean, it's already been growing over, ever since Steve Jobs came back, and then there was this whole renaissance with the iPhone and stuff like that. So whereas in the past, zero Apple devices would have been in the enterprise, nowadays iPhones, tablets, and then in particular business sectors, even Macs is not uncommon at all, right? But with this change, it's going to become even more common, and over time, it's going to be viable to have Mac iOS specific application development even in large organizations, which is pretty rare today. So that is definitely a ramification, in my opinion, of their decision. In addition to that hardware decision, if you look around in the Apple ecosystem, so this is Swift WASM, this is Swift to WebAssembly. If you don't know WebAssembly, you really need to investigate it, because basically, although it's not going to happen overnight, the web as we know it today with HTML, JavaScript, CSS is eventually going to be disappearing. And WebAssembly is going to take its place, basically. And WebAssembly is just a lower level language that is similar to assembly, but it allows any language, whether it be Swift or not, that is static typing capable, of generating WebAssembly. So therefore, any host, it doesn't just have to be a browser, by the way, but any host that supports WebAssembly can have code written in any language, any statically typed language that emits WebAssembly, and it will run. So again, the days of pure JavaScript, HTML, CSS are eventually, maybe not right away, but eventually going to go away. And Swift is already preparing to be part of that. They are also continuing to make significant improvements to the language, to the runtime. Here's an article about some of their plans for concurrency. I also know that they are considering adding features similar to Rust in terms of memory ownership into future Swift versions, which I think is a very big deal, because it makes certain security vulnerabilities impossible. They have been continuing to improve the Swift language. Of course, 5.3 only came out a couple of months ago. They're supporting additional Linux distributions. Swift is gaining traction in the cloud. They're coming up with additional frameworks, namespaces for certain specific tasks like server support, clustering. They're doing Swift on Windows now, which is insane. Obviously, they made Swift open source. They have this, how should I say, root library, sort of like the what is that called? The C++ main library. They're adding additional features to that. They've created several years ago a Swift server working group. So they're even pushing Swift on the server side, which, if you think about it, totally makes sense because who's going to be probably, at least initially, the number one customer of Swift on the server? Well, it's going to be them, right? They have so many services that they're doing right now that it just makes perfect sense for them to put their own language onto the server, which again means more jobs for Swift developers, more opportunities for Swift developers. Whether Vapor is the framework of choice in the future or not doesn't really matter. Swift is going to be the language, and eventually Objective-C is going to start to disappear. So all of these things are really coming to fruition to make Swift in the next few years a very major language that I think you guys, if you haven't already, really need to check out. In addition to this, it is not just Apple and a handful of small players that are using Swift or pushing Swift. Take a look at this. So TensorFlow, if you're not familiar with machine learning, TensorFlow is probably the major machine learning framework out there. It's more popular than Core ML from Apple in terms of developer, mind share and what developers want to use. So Google, without any push from Apple, has decided that they're going to make Swift, how should I say, the major language for TensorFlow going forward. And the reason for that is, so they've started, because they've been doing machine learning for so long. They're kind of the leader in the space, right? So they've hit the limitations of Python. And sure, they could go the C++ route, but they've decided, honestly, like most organizations, that they don't want to write C++ code, right? Because honestly, who in the hell wants to write C++, right? So they investigated, they tried various languages, they even tried Go, believe it or not, and they settled on Swift. Just Google it and you'll see the article for their own reasonings why. But basically, because Swift is a native language and you're getting native performance, and because Swift has become cross-platform in a genuine way, definitely for Linux, although Windows is sort of a work in progress as of right now, but I'm sure for Apple's own benefit, they're going to continue to push that. Google has decided to go Swift, all in on Swift, which is amazing fact and news. So additionally, if you're in my channel, some of you guys might be coming from, say, React, particularly the cross-platform versions, React Native, React Ionic. Maybe some of you guys are considering learning Flutter because, it's so hot right now, which it definitely is. Flutter is super hot right now. But what I would suggest to you, as a guy who started in this industry doing .NET C# and pure web development. I was doing this stuff when, jQuery was a thing. Then I moved on to like Knockout and then React and Angular and all of that stuff. And most recently, I decided to move into Swift. And I was kind of thinking it over for a while, but the thing that pushed me over the edge to go Swift sort of hardcore is that WWDC. And then their latest presentation a couple of days ago only confirmed for me that, again, I'm not a fanboy. This video is taken in a MacBook Pro 16-inch, the Intel one. Obviously, the native one, the ARM one hasn't come out yet. And honestly, I don't like the device that much. So I'm not an Apple fanboy. I'm just telling you guys. I'm suggesting that whether you like Apple or not, in the broader industry, you cannot deny that they are a powerhouse, that they do in fact innovate, and and a lot of other companies just copy what they do, right? So if they are this innovator, and if you don't think they are, then that's fine. You don't need to watch this video. But if you agree with me that at least in part they are this innovator, and these same innovators are now designing their own chips, right? Because forget about what ARM is. ARM is not designing their chips. Apple engineers are designing these chips. So if this innovative company is now innovating on the chip side, they most assuredly will entice an additional set of customers because of the innovations that they do on the chip side, whether it be for machine learning. They're not, in my opinion, there yet when it comes to the GPU, but knowing their prior work, I think they very well will soon be competitive, and maybe they'll come up with some crazy stuff that we haven't seen before on the GPU side. And who knows what other stuff they can come up with. So their hardware, along with their devices, along with the stuff they do on their devices, Face ID and Touch ID before that, and their aesthetic and their design and all of that stuff, combined with them making their own chips, it's going to entice a whole new sector of customers that they never had before. I think that they are going to legitimately become a major market share holder in the PC space, laptops and desktops, both on personal, but also even in the enterprise. And all of this stuff and all of these benefits to Apple and market share gain and all of that stuff means nothing if all they have is this fancy hardware. They need software to make this stuff go, and that means they need developers. They need third-party apps. So they need guys like us who can code these applications. So, long-winded opinion. I'm going to stop right here. If you haven't already, take a look at Swift. By all means, if you're looking at Flutter, continue to do that. But I suspect that a lot less need for cross-platform solutions will be happening in the next few years if Apple's plans come to fruition. So thanks for watching. Like the video, share the video. Thanks. See you next time.